let's talk vaping.
Yeah.
Versus smoking. It's obviously fairly well documented that smoking's pretty bad for you. Vaping's the new thing, and now there's kids, dude. Like just kids. They're like 11 walking around with freaking vapes. I gotta assume it's not good for you either. So let's talk through some of the effects that vaping might have on you.
So vaping there's a difference in types of vape that we have learned this because Jonathan made a few videos on vaping, and if you want to agitate a community, make a video demonizing vaping. They are very passionate because there is nicotine type vaping, and then there's cannabis, and then you have regulated versus unregulated. And to me, I think we're just splitting hairs here. And at the end of the day, they're all going to be bad. Yes, it's on a spectrum, right? I think there's no disagreement. Like the unregulated THC cartridge you got from the trunk of a car, in a Denny's parking lot. Yes, okay. That is going to be the worst cartridge, okay? But at the end of the day, your lungs evolved to inhale oxygen, nitrogen. That's pretty much it, and exhale carbon dioxide. There are vapors that are going in there, obviously that's in its name, that we just don't have long-term studies. So what we do know is with THC-based cartridges, something called EVALI. I forget off the top of my head what EVALI stands for, but EVALI is destroying lungs. We've seen data around popcorn lung. Popcorn lung got its name based around movie theater popcorn. And workers, the fumes actually destroying parts of their alveoli, the distal most sacs inside their lungs based off those fumes. So to me, it's like, I think this is about as common sense as it is. Look, I'll be honest. I used to smoke cigarettes when I was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
I used to justify that like crazy. I know it's bad for me, but I could stop it. Like I know the mentality of smokers, and I know the mentality of vapors is the same thing, even if they don't want to pretend. They want to pretend that it's different.
Yeah.
At the end, they're justifying it. I think everyone knows that it's more likely it's bad for you than it isn't. But the thing that they're holding their hat on is that we don't have a ton of long-term data. But the data we are having come in is suggesting that, yes, there are definitely problems. It's affecting the sacs. So these alveoli, these are really tiny. These are microscopic little sacs. That's the very end of the bronchial tubes. So when you breathe in, that's where air stops and it meets the bloodstream. Those are somewhat getting destroyed or losing elasticity.
These are in your lungs?
These are in your lungs.
Okay.
So they're losing elasticity. You're seeing in some cases, again, it depends on, we'd have to ask, what is the vape? What are they smoking or inhaling? Things that are similar to like emphysema, COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There's all sorts of little incidents, but we just don't have long-term data. But I think anyone who is assuming this is going to be fine, that they could do this all day, every day until they're 90 and assume they'll be fine, I think they're deluding themselves.
The substance is basically irrelevant, whether it's THC or nicotine or whatever it is. It's pretty much irrelevant.
Yeah, they're all going to affect you differently because THC it's a different molecule, right, than nicotine is. So you have to have different carrier molecules. There's different things, there's different subtleties, and those are going to interact with the body. And there's no question that what it seems like is unregulated THC cartridges are very bad. But at the end of the day, you still are inhaling things with the nicotine. Nicotine itself is not that bad. So it depends. There's
actually, I've heard that it's actually not. That's actually pretty good in some
exactly.
cases.
But the problem is it's also very easy to abuse. And so, I mean, this is where we just have to be honest with ourselves and say like, okay, is it worth it? Is it worth the effort or the risk that's coming with it? And for me, it's like I don't see why you'd really go down that realm. If you don't have to.
What about smoking weed, like smoking flower versus a vape, or smoking flower versus smoking a cigarette?
It's awful for you. Smoking anything.
Because I mean, anything you inhale into your lungs besides oxygen.
The way I always put it is it's like you're lighting something on fire right in front of your face and inhaling it. That's not good for you. Smoke, there are many different kinds of smoke and they all matter differently, but they're all bad for you. And we know this. So it's like if someone were to I'm not in the habit of giving medical advice, but if someone were to just ask, like, Justin, like, what's your preference scale? Right. Like, obviously, like vaping.
Well, it's like alcohol, right? Like no alcohol is good for you, but tequila is probably like the best one.
Exactly.
If we're going to if we're forcing me to pick like good alcohol, it's probably the clear tequila.
Yes.
It's probably best.
Exactly. So that's where I'm at. Is vaping is going to be the best one more out of those typical, but with smoking is like, okay, smoking a cigar, how's that going to be different? Because if you inhale the cigar smoke, that's going to be very bad for you. Well, you shouldn't be inhaling the cigar smoke. But this is where you start getting like all these little nuances. And I'm not in the habit of fighting with the community in my comment section.
Yeah.
But I read those comments, and you can see that like when I did a video talking about this very thing, about how all smoke is bad. I don't care what it's coming from. It's bad for you. The amount of pushback I got from cigar smokers was intense, because they are just out there like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, I get it, but I mean, do you really think like no smoke, like not even a little bit of smoke is getting into your lungs? Right. It's all very bad for you. It destroys, again, COPD, so emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's going to create bronchitis. Yeah. It's going to, you are literally inhaling hot like fumes into your lungs. It's going to destroy them.
Is there so let's do the fake scale thing here. So we're talking like smoking cigarettes, probably all the way like worst thing you could do. Mm. What would be the best thing if you're picking one of those vices?
Picking one of those vices,
like cigar smoke, assuming you're not inhaling cigar smoke, you're doing it properly, you're smoking in the mouth, or like smoking, a joint, or smoking a vape, or like where do you put all these things on this kind of?
I would probably put it at
bad to worst spectrum.
That's a really good question. I'd have to do some I don't want to, it's not that I need to do a robust comparative analysis or anything like that, but I mean, like I get the feeling,
some views though if you did.
Right, probably. I would probably put it and rank it. I'd say probably THC. It's a toss up, because I mean, like I'm also a fan of THC and CBD, and I am really interested
of the compounds themselves.
Yeah. I'm very much interested in them. I'm very interested in psychedelics as a whole, and while THC doesn't really classify as a psychedelic, I really am optimistic about a lot of things with it. So that might be affecting my bias with it. Okay, but at the same time, I would definitely put it in vaping. So whether it's nicotine or vaping, those are probably going to be the best.
Vaping would be better than smoking.
100%.
Okay.
100%. But I mean, there could be a study that comes out next week, and it's just, and I'm just like, oh that
obliterates that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, it doesn't bode well for my cigar smoking either. But some of those vices, man, like sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I know this is bad for me, but I enjoy this so much.
You don't have to be, exactly. You don't have to be perfect, and I'm not.
And nobody's vice free,
Exactly.
And like if you tell me you are,
then you're lying.
Yeah. There's something you're hiding.
Yeah, this is never, for me, it's never been about passing judgment. It's merely just kind of just educating. That's all it is. Like, like I am all about personal agency. Make your own choices.
Well, also the frustrating part, I'm sure from your end, is just like seeing the like desperate justification from people who want to feel good about it. Yeah. Instead of just admitting that it's just all right. Yeah, it's not good for me, but I'm gonna smoke a cigar.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Honestly, probably the best comments I've seen come from cigarette smokers, because they all understand it's bad.
There's no talking your way out of that one.
Yeah, they're just like, look, we do it because we want to be rebels, and I'm like, okay, you know who you are. That's all good
for you.
It's all good.
Oh man, is there like a frequency? Like, so asking from me being a cigar smoker. If you're smoking 3 cigars a day, that's got to be a difference between smoking 1 cigar a month, right? I mean, do you know any of the data on that?
I don't know it off the top. I did at one point, because I did at one point, but I don't remember at this point. Just understand, like, put it this way. You have a turnover rate for cells called epithelial cells inside of your mouth, inside of your throat. And it can take a few days to a couple weeks, depending on the type of cell and the exact location. Just think, like, even if you're inhaling and puffing on that cigar, you're destroying the epithelium that are on your teeth, on the roof of your mouth, on your tongue. Those are just getting bombarded, right? So that's going to take a little bit of time for them to fully regenerate and get to where that'll take a couple days. But it also just depends on the type of cigar, right? I mean, is this a full-blown Cuban, like that you imported? Sure. When you shouldn't have, there is nuances to this.
Because it also matters like what kind of chemicals are wrapped in the tobacco leaves and like the additive. That's what kind of, from my understanding, makes cigarettes worse than basically anything else, right? Is like just the additives and the chemicals and the other shit they put in there that's not tobacco.
Absolutely.